Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, welcome everybody. And hey, Amy, happy to have you here from Asheville. Yeah, so I'm gonna get started. And this is a really, it sounds like we have some people who are completely new to anything psychedelic. And this is a really great time for that in the world and at this moment with this talk. This is a talk that is really oriented for just learning more about psychedelics, psychedelic integration. And, even if you're advanced, it's always really good to keep a beginner's mindset and get a little refreshing too. And, if any questions pop up during this time, I welcome y'all to put it in the chat as well. And, if we don't have a slide for it, uh, I'll try to get to it for sure. Cool. So this presentation, I've titled it From Experience to Transformation, A Journey Beyond the Journey. And a lot of that I feel is relevant to me, specifically sharing my own story and my journey with psychedelics for my own transformation. So a little bit about me. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm the founder of Brooklyn Balance LLC. I'm a psychedelic integration coach and facilitator. I have various certifications, including from the 12-month-long TAM integration program, MAPS, psychedelic support, and more. I'm also a permitted worker in Oregon as well. So a little background on me. In 2003, I had my first life-changing experience. And then in 2008, later on, when I graduated from college, I got laid off and I began to have debilitating panic attacks. I couldn't leave my bed. I was short of breath. I had a lot of stomach issues, headaches, all sorts of physical ailments. So I was prescribed SSRIs. And SSRIs, for me, they worked. They treated the symptoms. They allowed me to function. They allowed me to work. They allowed me to leave my house, to live my life. But they didn't get to the root issue of a lot of what was going on for me. So I began to really get more of an understanding of that later on in 2016, and I began to taper off of SSRIs very slowly. And once I was off, I began to explore with my therapist and my community members with psychedelics and psychedelics for therapeutic purposes, right? So I wasn't just taking something and running around in the grass or dancing at a nightclub. In 2020, with COVID, I got burned out. I was working in film production. I was working a lot. And I reached a breaking point and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I pushed pause and I decided to pursue a new path. Today, my life is very different. I have a new company, Brooklyn Balance LLC, focused on psychedelic integration coaching and facilitation, education, harm reduction, helping others. And over the years, I've done pretty significant amount of training. And what's really great is I have really beautiful community here in New York City. So for example, this photo down here in the lower right was a little weekend trip we did up in Westchester and just having people together. The man next to that photo, that's me and Rick Doblin. He's very friendly. If you ever see him at an event, go up and say hi. So a little disclaimer as we get started. This presentation is for educational purposes only. It does not condone illegal activities or replace professional mental health medical services. While research expands and decriminalization efforts increase, most psychedelics remain controlled and federally. Most substances are illegal. So what is psychedelic integration? So there's so many various ways to answer this question. And a perspective I like to share for it is that it's the practice of preparing for, processing, and making meaningful changes after a psychedelic experience. It includes, and it's not limited to, before and after framing. And without integration, one might have a psychedelic experience and you might have fleeting insights, unprocessed emotions, confusion. With integration, there's clarity, transformation, deeper self-awareness. Some key elements of psychedelic integration: creating positive habits and shedding those that no longer serve us, right? So transformation, what are we calling in? What are we releasing? I spoke with someone yesterday that's working on releasing shame, and another person that's working on being less rigid. So more freedom, more liberation, and more flexibility is something that one might want to build up to. It also involves stabilizing after the journey, building community support, right? Doing this work alone can be very isolating and limiting. And when something goes astray, it can be detrimental and it can be more traumatic as well. Developing greater self-awareness for long-term transformation. I'm quite vocal that change doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. So the integration cycle, it starts with preparation, setting intentions, creating safety, then having the experience, the psychedelic journey itself, integrating the experience, processing and incorporating the insights from your experience, and then the transformation, living life differently as a result. So an integration is not just about psychedelics. So a little invitation I have for us and for you, if you've had a psychedelic experience, what's a fear that psychedelics helped you face? If you haven't had a psychedelic experience, what's a moment of deep insight or change in your life that was hard to integrate? Moving somewhere, a breakup, career shift, a spiritual realization? Drop your thoughts in the chat. Let's take a moment to do this. And if you're unable to because you're driving or you're walking, totally cool. It helped me face some trauma that I was afraid to do. Thank you for sharing. ADHD improved so much. Psychedelics, especially DMT and ayahuasca, helped me face the experience of fear, of death, I guess. And that's a real thing. Psychedelics can really help us face death, feel less fear with death. I've personally had a couple of experiences with that. And, a lot of it is just about like letting go, releasing control, accepting and surrendering. I really love those themes. Still fearful of it though. in a process. Yeah, I hear you. It's a process. It takes a lot of time. Thank you for sharing. Made me feel connected with my community. I'm so happy to hear that. And if anyone else, they are helping me get past the fear of failure, rejection, and work towards becoming the vision of myself I want to be. Yeah, thank you, Serti. Right. So the vision of moving forward, becoming the person we want to be, living the life that we want, and changing the stories that we might tell ourselves from our programming growing up that we heard that really got in our subconscious, and just shaking a lot of that out and putting in new programming. Fear of not knowing too, of not being in control fully. Psychedelics helped me befriend my fear. I think it helps run my life less. Great. Yeah, less fear. So mindset and readiness are very vital for psychedelic integration, right? So it's a lot of this is how we think, how is our mind processing, and being ready to go into it. So a lot of the things that are involved in psychedelic integration are questions versus answers. We don't always have the answers, and we can just ask questions. I like to view big ball of yarn and just pulling a string and just allowing it to unravel and seeing what happens. Right. Meditation, breath work, shadow work, nervous system regulation are really beneficial for in the preparation and integration process. Building trust with a facilitator or group, support, community, education. And then there's a great study that recently came out that talked about the statistics of how preparation reduces adverse experiences and enhances positive outcomes with the use of psychedelics. And I'll be going to the MAPS conference this June. And what I love about going is just it's a plethora of scientific studies and research that are just present there about all the benefits, risks, and also cons of psychedelics too. It's not all peachy all the time. So when you're preparing for your experience, whether alone or with someone in a community, right? Being aware of consent. What does consent look like for yourself? What are your boundaries? What does it look like for the person or persons that you'll be doing it with? And then screening, asking a lot of questions, really having clarity is super important, and vetting to make sure that it's safe. Substance selection. What medicine are you working with? What's the dose? Contraindications. Discussing safety concerns. Emergency contact and support systems. Something I ask everyone is what would constitute for an emergency where I should call 911? Because it just allows for that space to happen. Hey, what if there is an emergency? What does an emergency look like? Do I want an ambulance being called in that situation or not? There's a lot of things to consider. And testing substances where applicable. Dansafe.org, really great website, and there'll be a link to it at the end of this as well for testing kits. So reducing risk and being aware of contraindications, right? So if someone has a mental health risk, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, this can make a psychedelic experience very, very risky and put the person in potential harm. There's also something called HPPD that can happen with It's very rare, and there's a risk where the hallucinations continue to persist even after the experience. There's behavioral risks, challenging experiences, poor setting, lack of support. For anyone here that has experience with this, um, can you drop a 1 in the chat if this relates to you, if you've had a challenging experience, if you took something and the setting turned out to be poor, or if you took something and there wasn't enough support for you there. I can tell you in the past, that happened to me. Yeah. Medical risks, seizure risk. So if someone takes lithium, it's a real big red flag that it can induce a seizure with psychedelics. There's also risk of serotonin syndrome. So these are some resources here. Here you can scan this to learn more information out there on anything specific. And he says, on mushrooms, felt trapped by not being in nature. And that's something here in New York City that I talk a lot about. It's like, hey, we're in this urban jungle, and how do we get out to nature to really be in a way that humans were meant to be, with trees and grass and sun, not cooped up in our apartments all day long. So if you're going on your journey, you might consider you might consider it the hero's journey. So many of us are seeking transformation, and it mirrors this beautiful cycle, call to adventure, right? We get our mentors, our teachers, we get pushed in the right direction, we meet challenges, there's temptation. We might experience the abyss, death, rebirth, and when we come out, transformation, atonement, return, and then repeat. It's this beautiful cycle, and it's an archetype that I really, really love. Green flags when looking for a facilitator or a group that you're participating in. Experience, education, right? Where did they get their training? Is the person serving ayahuasca, did they experience ayahuasca and train in the jungle for 10 years? Or is it just somebody that drank once and decided to buy some off the dark web so that they can call themselves a shaman and serve you? Or is it a really experienced doctor that knows what they're doing? Is it someone that's a therapist? Is it someone that has studied coaching for a really long time? And in the community, it could be a body worker, or I know someone that worked as a bartender and is in this work now. And because she had that bartending experience, it makes her a very personable person. And that's very attractive to people. Vetting. Do they screen you? Do they ask a lot of questions? Do they really try to get to know you? Ethical considerations. No false promises, like 10 years of therapy in one night, right? One might experience 10 years of therapy in one night, but if I or someone come to you and say, hey man, this is like 10 years of therapy in one night, not such a great thing, in my opinion. Emphasis on prep, integration, and non-judgment. And how do they handle consent and power dynamics? Red flags, lack of screening, preparation, guru complex. I have all the answers. They don't meet in person. There are people that facilitate journeys and ceremonies on Zoom, and that might work for some people, and it's something I don't recommend. They might push a higher dose without consent. They don't offer integration support. They leave you hanging. They have a lack of medical or psychological awareness and disrespecting boundaries. A good facilitator empowers, supports, and respects your journey. If something feels off, trust your gut. Trust your heart, trust your mind, trust your gut. So I have another little exercise for us to do. If it's safe for you, you can write it down, you can journal, you can type it in the chat. And if you're driving or if you're walking or if you just want to listen, you can just reflect on it. A question I have is, what's a belief you once held strongly but later questioned? What shifted for you with this belief? So just take a moment to maybe close your eyes or give yourself a soft gaze to the floor. Just allow for some spaciousness. What is something you believed very firmly and later questioned? And did something shift for you? Maybe it was something right. Maybe it was something not right for you. Maybe it was a habit or a pattern. Maybe it was how you thought about yourself. Valeria says, the ability to create a more human and connected world because I didn't have the money or the resources or the enough preparation to be a good facilitator. Thank you for sharing. My notion of the natural world, I became more open to human creation and ways of being as a part of nature. Beautiful. That things I did have some sort of importance in time. I guess I wasn't seeing the bigger picture of life. Right. Thank you so much for putting all that in the chat, and I welcome anyone else to continue. And so, yeah, it's really beautiful because sometimes psychedelics can really allow us to zoom out and see the bigger picture and to get a different framing, a different point of view on who we are, how we see things, and how that influences our lives. You know, I can share also the mention of money is that I used to feel a lot of lack and scarcity. And I grew up with in lower working class. My dad was a taxi driver, a yellow cab taxi driver here in New York. And there was just a lot of fighting in my family about money. And, what I realized later on in life was it's more so a mindset. Like I could have absolutely nothing and still feel abundant in my life and work with that abundance. So rather than looking what I don't have, I'm looking at what I do have and really just practicing a lot of gratitude for that. So thank you all for sharing. So vital aspects of integration, self-awareness, know thyself is a great saying. I like to say, and there's truth to it. You ever listen to like the Ram Dass talks? It's just a lot about self-awareness. And I'm a big fan of Michael Singer too. Highly recommend the book, The Untethered Soul. Just a lot about who am I? Why am I this way? Am I the sum of my learned experiences? Embodiment, connecting with your body, listening to your body, your nervous system. What is it telling you? How can you listen to it more? And how can you lead from your body? Emotional processing, working through what arises. Spirituality and altruism, expanding beyond self. And another word I like to use for spirituality is consciousness. We don't have to be spiritual and all woo-woo. We can have a sense of, hey, we're just more conscious of what's happening. Community and support, finding like-minded people, right? Finding the others, not doing this sort of thing alone or in isolation. Boundaries, honoring your own needs. Epistemic humility, holding insights as possibilities rather than absolute truths. So psychedelics might show us something, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It could be true, it might not be true. So just being aware that these are insights, it's possible, and it's not absolute. So moving into some integration practices, movement, yoga, hiking, dance, tai chi, great ways. And these are all things to bring into our life in general. And these types of things in their own way are very meditative and can be beneficial to the psychedelic integration process. Body work, acupuncture, go to sauna, get a massage. Take care of that body, take care of that mind. Stillness, meditation, breath work, grounding, just giving ourselves some space, right? We might hear a lot about peak experience chasing, or even the person that is always trying to have success or success project after project. What is it like to just chill out? Emotional processing, journaling, therapy. You're going to hear a lot about journaling in the psychedelic space, and that's because it's true. And integrating therapy too, when doing this work, is really great. Getting a better understanding of our past, why we are the way we are today, and what we can do about it for the future. Diet, eating well, detoxing, digital detox. How are you living your life and bringing that wellness into it with what you put in your body and around you in your environment? Nature. And in creative expression, art, music, writing, get creative. What did you like when you were a kid? When the teacher put out all the crayons and markers and papers or clay or Play-Doh, what did you gravitate towards? Do you still like to do that? If not, what do you need to get back to it? Post-ceremony care. Move slowly, mindfully. Plan safe transport home. Connect with trusted support. Express experience creatively. Eating well. And a really important one, avoid impulsive decisions, right? So my teacher, Daniel Schenken, he tells this great story about this guy. He had his experience, and the medicine told him to go to the jungle and play music, just like with his guitar and sing. And Daniel asks him, he says, well, when was the last time you were in nature? What does nature look like for you? And the guy says, oh, there's this park and I used to go to all the time. And then he's like, why aren't you going? He's like, oh, I just kind of stopped walking that way. Well, what's keeping you from walking that way again? And then the guitar is just, how can one pick up that guitar? We don't need to quit our jobs right away or divorce or move to a new city. Like going slow and easily is really important. So the medicine was We interpret it as the medicine just saying, get a little more nature and pick up your guitar once a day and play it, and maybe play it in the park. And if you do want to move to the jungle and play guitar, that's cool too. And then rest and reduce stimulation. Just like chilling out. Really, really important. And like not even like Netflix and chill, like what is actually nourishing that allows you to rest? So deeper processing. What emotions and sensations arose? And a question you'll hear all the time in the psychedelic space, made famous by internal family systems, is what did you feel in your body? So you have an emotion, you have a sensation, and what did you feel in your body? Where did you feel it? What did that do for you? Did it expand? Did it contract? What was confusing or difficult? Did you encounter symbolic imagery, entities, guides, deities? Because that can happen. What life changes are you considering? Right? Like what are you moving towards? Where do you imagine yourself 5 years from now? And how can you practice gratitude daily? It's like often, especially today in today's world, where with the news and politics, it's easy to think that things are not so great. It's easy to think that the world is in a really, really bad place and things are hard. Yes. And the mind is like Velcro to negativity and Teflon to positivity. The mind is just wired like that. It's our survival mechanisms from thousands and thousands of years of evolution. Our mind is here to keep us safe. And so giving it an abundance of gratitude and positivity is to its benefit. So, going to talk a little bit about clinical versus traditional contexts. And yeah, reminder, if any questions pop up, feel free to drop them in the chat too. This is a lot of content, and it can be confusing, especially if you're new to it. So, there's the clinical setting, right? Maybe somewhere someone's receiving ketamine at a doctor's office, or maybe someone's going to Oregon to receive psilocybin. There's the clinic. And then there can be the more cultural, spiritual framework, doing it in nature, in a shala, in the jungle, working with a shaman rather than a doctor, working with just someone more of a medicine man or woman context, right? In the clinic, in the medical system, they'll screen you. You fill out the forms, do your HIPAA stuff, everything's explained, and for me, it feels kind of sterile. More so outside of there's more of a community vetting process. We're getting to know each other, or someone might refer you. If you're going into a group, it's like, hey, I'm vouching for this person. And I'm going to tell you this group, they're cool. That kind of thing. A clinic, a doctor's setting is like more of a specific diagnosis. Like, oh, we're going to work on your depression. We're going to work on your anxiety. While the holistic way might just be like, hey, you're having a hard time. We don't need to label it. We're just going to try to make things a little more easeful and calm and tranquil. I'm personally not like the biggest fan of labels when it comes to like diagnosis. Yes, they have value. And sometimes I feel we can believe them a lot and they start to become part of our ego. So, questioning it, maybe saying things like, I struggle sometimes with depression, rather than I have depression and depression is doing this to me. A licensed worker versus a more traditional practitioner, right? It's like, where did Maria Sabina get her certification or her license from? And if you're not familiar with me, Maria Sabina, she is the medicine woman, the shaman in Mexico who introduced psilocybin to the Western world. And so indigenous cultures have been working with these medicines for thousands of years. And then cultural appropriation comes in, and it's like, well, I got my license in this, so I can do that. Cool. And there are a lot of very experienced people out there that have been doing this work for a very long time and trained with lineages that really, really know what they're doing or not. But it's something to consider as more of this becomes very popular in mainstream society. Oprah just endorsed psychedelics in her own way. And then, doctor setting, this data collection, they'll look at statistics. Well, this time you were like that, and last time you were like this, versus oral tradition, just talking. Where are we today? Like, yeah, it can be helpful looking at statistics with an individual because it can help us learn about other people. And none of this work, in my opinion, is cookie cutter. I feel everything is individualized. So, there's a lot of great stuff going on in terms of like science and research and data collection with the mainstream and with doctors too. And there's great, really excellent, amazing collaboration happening between the two as well. Uh, but what I love about this chart, it doesn't have the dates, but it's pretty much over the past decade, the amount of clinical trials involving psychedelics. And so it's like, LSD and psilocybin, all of these things, there's a lot of research going on with them. And every day there's new stuff coming out. So, if you're going into this kind of work, things like integration circles can be a really great way to learn more, get exposure, meet community, reading books. Spiritual Emergency, put together and edited by Stan Groff, is really, really great read. The Psychedelic Handbook, if you scan this right here, it will bring you to a full list of resources as well. So, one of the main things with psychedelic integration is turning insights into action. So you had an insight. What was the core messaging? What was really important? And what does that reveal about you, your patterns, your beliefs, your emotions? Make it tangible. How does this insight show up in your daily life, right? Does this pattern serve you or not? And how can you go about moving forward with it? So, for example, if it was self-compassion, how can you practice being self-compassionate daily? Create small, actionable steps, right? No big changes. Don't move to the jungle and play guitar right away. It's just, set a reminder or make space in your calendar. This morning, I'm going to do that. The afternoon, I'm going to take a walk. In the evening, I'm going to have my drum class. Even if it's one small thing, in time, it snowballs. And then reflect and adjust, right? So what happens when you make these changes? What happens when the shift happens? And then keep refining because it's an ongoing process. And it's life, right? It's the hero's journey. You start, you go through it, you end, something else came up. Cool. We're going through it again. I will say, like, for me, you know, I will look at working with medicines as like getting an oil change every once in a while. I'm not doing it monthly. I'm doing it like every 100,000 miles. I'm doing it as needed. Maybe the car broke down. Maybe it needs an emergency tune-up. Maybe the windshield just needs some wiping, right? It's all situational. So go slow. Less is more. Allow integration time. Avoid chasing peak experiences. Some substances are neurotoxic. Give your brain a rest. Integration reveals deeper layers over time. And the real work happens between experiences, right? It's like you came out of the experience, now what? Because in that one night, that one ceremony, that one day, there'll be a lot or not, and what's going to happen after. Transformation occurs when insights become action. So commit, integrate, and evolve. And that's the end of this little presentation. So here's my contact information. Social media is either Brooklyn Balance or Brooklyn Balance Integration. Linktree, and you can just scan right here. It'll take you to everything. And something I invite you to chew on is what's one insight, question, or shift you're taking from today? So, if you want to send it to me afterward, cool. If, you want to unmute yourself and share here or drop in the chat, you're welcome to. And we can also, there's time for a Q&A as well.
I listened to a podcast recently, and the person being interviewed also mentioned epistemic humility. I really liked that. I think that sometimes I find in the psychedelic community, people's spiritual perspectives can be just sort of mirrored to them through their experiences, and then that can somehow be justification for their experiences. And ultimately I've come to more and more this idea that I haven't got a clue. um I just don't know. um which is hard in a sense, because um I suppose I had unconscious ideas that allowed that, based on trauma probably, and just kind of living in the society we live in, which is traumatic for anyone, as Gabor Mate says, and just did stuff based on those kind of ideas. And now, given that I've really realized that I don't really know what life's about, and what the point of it is, and what the meaning of life is, I don't have a sense anymore of what can inform my life. Um, and my husband's done a lot of psychedelics with me, and he's very much of the, he hasn't changed in his perspective at all, and really is of the opinion that life's just for living and you just get on with it. And he's always been like that. Yeah, so it's left me in a bit of a limbo state. But one I'm grateful for, in a sense. I don't want to rush into kind of finding some sort of framework um for viewing life within. I went to attended a meeting on integration recently, and someone was talking about, God wasn't with them at the time, and they couldn't find God, and apparently the sort of the dark night of the soul is linked to not finding God. That's the sort of, or God not being there anymore. But yeah, I guess if I'm not looking for God, I don't know what I'm looking for. And yet, what I'm aware of is that, humans need a sort of, as you mentioned, we need a sort of sense of community and connection. And that gives us meaning, I suppose. And originally, as hunter gatherers, we just tried to exist. That was, we just tried to procreate and live. But now there's so much more in terms of sort of possibilities for our existence. And psychedelics has really opened me up to, what am I doing, and do I need to carry on doing it? And so, in a sense, in the kind of concept of integration is around integrating into your life. But my question for myself is, what am I integrating into if my life kind of doesn't feel quite so solid anymore? Um, because uh, yeah, my sense of self and sense of life and existence has changed. Yeah, so I'm just kind of with that at the moment, I think. Um, yeah, and I resonated with what a lot of what you said. But I've written down for myself what am I letting in and what am I releasing. So I'll ponder those questions.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, I guess I'm wondering, you're sharing that, or are are you open to a reflection?
Oh yeah, I'm really open to anything. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm. You know, I'm 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 not very religious. But when I heard you say, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for, the story of I think it was Moses wandering through the desert sort of came to me. And I can't remember if it was 40 days or 40 years or something like that. Um, and, for me, there was a time where that was very relevant for me. And I was like, I'm not really sure what's going on. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. And it is, in your experience, it sounds like it's been very challenging. And in mine, it was as well. And it sounds like you're giving yourself space to kind of vibe things out. And by being here, also, you're here, you're like, hey, like, this is something that might work. I'm open to possibilities. And this is the thing where I might be wandering through the desert and it's, oh, like, okay, I found this. This is giving me more insight. Um, so it's a tough place to be. And like I mentioned, the hero's journey. It's a part of the hero's journey. And you're the hero on your journey. And I have this like vision of you like on your journey at this moment. It's beautiful, and thank you so much for sharing. And if you want to drop in more, we can totally talk more privately, one-on-one. I'm happy to share more about uh, my journey with you as well.
Thank you. What molecule do you have here? I just noticed.
This is MDMA.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. And I'll drop my email in the chat again. And if you signed up for this, you'll receive a recording of it. You're welcome to share it. It'll also be posted on my website. Any other questions?
No questions. I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I unfortunately was late and didn't see the beginning, but I'm planning on checking out the recording. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate you. Anyone else? Cool. We can end it there. Thank you all. Amazing having you here. Thank you all for participating and sharing. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.